So, in this particular lecture, I'm going to talk about a very important topic in mathematics, that is functions. Clear? Functions. So, students first get to know about functions in class 8, class 8, no, in class 9, I guess, where they study about remainder theorem. Clear? Where they study about remainder theorem. Clear? They are given some fx is equals to some polynomial, and they are asked to find the remainder when fx is, let's say, divided by some x minus 1, let's say. So what we do is that we put x equals to 1, we get 3. So we say that when x square plus 2 is divided by x minus 1, we get 3 as the remainder, kind of like that. Clear? So you know these sorts of things we class in class 9 students get to know. In class 10 they come to know about polynomial functions, where they are asked to find the roots. Okay, polynomial functions, where they are given, like, they are given a polynomial function Pn, where you have n square plus n plus 2. They're asked to find the root of the polynomial function. What we do is that we equate this to 0 and we find the values of n for which this particular condition satisfies. So these sorts of things students usually learn in class 9 and 10. In 9 and 10, in class 11 they suddenly get accustomed, they have there in the syllabus something called relation and mapping. Clear? Relation and mapping. Okay. And before that they already are told about or learned about sets. Okay. So what is a set? A set A is basically a well defined well defined collection of data. Clear? A set A is a well defined collection of data. We have elements of A. Suppose we have 1, 2 and 3 as elements of A, elements of B as 3, 4, 5, let's say. Then what we do is that basically we have something called the Cartesian product of these two sets, where we find the ordered pairs of each of the elements. So we do it like this. So 1 and 3 becomes an ordered pair, 1 and 4 becomes an ordered pair, and 1 and 5 becomes an ordered pair. Then we have 2, 3, we have 2, 4, we have 2, 5, we have 3, 3, 3, 4, and 3, 5. So these are the elements of the Cartesian product of these two sets. They are called the ordered paired elements. Clear? Now, what is a mapping? Okay. So suppose this represents the set A and this represents the set B. So let this be 1, 2, 3. Let this be 3, 4, and 5. Now we are asked to define a relation, such that A belongs to capital A has an unique relation with some small b belongs to capital A. That is, you know, one element of this particular set A has a relation which is unique for that particular element, and the relation is with some element of B. Yeah. So let's say that A is in some way related to B. Okay. So in this particular manner, we can actually define some particular relation such that every element of A has a unique element which with which it is actually related in B. Suppose 1 is related to 3, 2 is related to 4, and suppose 3 is also related to 4. It is not mandatory that 3 must relate to 5. 3 can also relate to 4. But what is the restriction in this sort of a relation? Two elements of A can be related, two elements of A can be related with one element of B, but one element one element of A cannot be related with two or more elements of B. two or more elements of B. Clear? So let us define the relation as f. Clear? And the value of A, okay, is called the domain of the function. Clear? That is the elements which are related. Okay, so we write it inside the bracket. So according to my diagram, f1 is related to 3, that is, okay, f2 is related to 4, and f3 is related to 4. So 2 and 3 are two elements which are related to one single element of B. So this is satisfied, right? These sorts of relation will form a function, clear, which satisfies these conditions. One element cannot have two elements in the second set. That is, f1 cannot have 3 as well as f1 cannot have 4. This thing cannot be done. If this sort of a condition arises, then this particular thing can be a relation but cannot be a function. Function means a mapping. Clear? Function is also called a mapping. What we are actually doing is that we are transforming this set to this set, okay, or to elements of this set. That is, we are actually taking an element of from A, okay, and we are using this operator of function where we are using A as an input, and we are transforming into it to some element B which belongs to the second set, and this is the final outcome or the output. Clear? For example, you want to transform 1 to its square, 2 to its square, 3 to its square. So what we can do is that we can actually define a function fx where x is the input, and we can transform it to x square, right? And suppose we only want to transform 1, 2 and 3. So we need to define the set A as the elements 1, 2 and 3, and the set B can be any, must be a non-empty set, of course, and it must include 1, 4 and 9, but can have more elements. But these three elements must be there. And then we define the function as f exists such that f has its domain in A, that it takes its inputs from the set A and its outputs belong to the set B. Okay, this sort of a structure means that the inputs are in A, the outputs are in B. Clear? I think you people got it. Okay, what is the general meaning of a function? So functions are basically transforming elements of A to elements of B. This is the main use of functions. Okay, this is the main use of functions, transformation. Okay, and functions are very widely used in the field of mathematics. For example, you have a function given as fx is equals to x square plus 2x plus 3, right? If you put x equals to 1, you get 1 square plus 2 plus 3, so this becomes 6. Therefore the function f transform 1 to 6. Similarly, if you put f minus 1 in place of x, so you get 1 minus 2 plus 3, that is equals to 2. So f transforms minus 1 to 2. Clear? So f is actually transforming one sort of a input to an output, a desired output. Am I clear? So this is what a function basically means. Okay, mapping. So what is the significance of the thing mapping? So I'm telling you that also. Suppose we take the x square wala example only. So we have in the set A 1, 2 and 3, and in the set B suppose we have 1, 4, 9, let's say 10, 12, anything. So see, when we are getting f1 is equals to 1 square, f2 is equals to 2 square, f3 is equals to 3 square, we can actually map this input output system as 1 gets transformed to 1, 2 gets transformed to 4, 3 gets transformed to 9. So this particular actually representation is called the mapping. We are mapping the transformations. Are you guys clear what actually is the significance of functions? Okay, So what we actually do is that we can define any arbitrary relation between two sets. Okay, we can define any arbitrary relation between two sets two sets in the form of functions if one domain value means this set is called the domain, right? This set is called the domain, the elements of which is getting transformed, thus that particular set is called the domain. If one domain value has one or has a unique range means, or has a unique output, it will be better, has a unique output, and two or more domains two or more domains can have the same output. Clear? Two or more domains can have the same output. Okay. Acha. Now you people might have heard the term domain and range. Okay. So domain and range, I just told you what is a domain. I have not told you about range, but I have told you about domain. So I just told you about the structure, that this is the representation which tells us that F transforms the elements of A to the elements of B. Okay. Now, what does A involve? All the inputs. Okay. So this set is called the domain. But what is B? So B is called the codomain. What is the codomain? So codomain is the set which includes all the outputs of F. Okay. Like for example, in the previous example which we had just taken, okay, here. So this is your domain, and this particular set B is the codomain. But the set of elements 1, 4, and 9, the set of elements 1, 4, and 9 is called the range, because it is the set of only the outputs of the function. Am I clear? So range is basically a subset of codomain. Clear? Range is a subset of codomain. Range is the set of all the specific outputs of the function, while codomain is the set which includes the elements of the range but can have more arbitrary elements. Clear? So this is the difference between codomain and range. So when you will be given a structure like this, that A is your domain, B is not your range but your codomain. Now this might be possible that range equals codomain. This case is possible, but arbitrarily or generally this is not always mandatory to be possible. So B is your codomain. Now you need to check what should be the range, and on that you can judge whether your codomain equals your range or your range is basically a subset of codomain. Am I clear? So I guess now you people have understood what a function is, what are the different aspects of a function. So I'm retailing this thing. A function is a type of relation between two sets such that every element of A has a unique element, or has a unique output, or has a unique mapping, or has a unique transformed element in B, in the set B. Two inputs may have the same output, but one input cannot have two or more different outputs. Clear? Okay. Now, when now what actually happens is that now you people always can form a set of A and fa, this ordered pair, you can form a set of this ordered pair. Okay. How? That small a belongs to capital A and f of A belongs to capital B, because if A actually includes the transformed elements which belong to capital B set. Clear? Now this is very much visible from here, that F is also basically a subset of A cross B, or A Cartesian product of A and B. Clear? I think this particular portion is clear. Okay. So this is the main thing. Now suppose let us understand a few now how are you given a function. Okay, so basically you are given a particular operator as this f, and f gives you a transformed, f takes an input as x, where x is called the independent variable and fx gets transformed to, let's say, sin x. Okay, so this sin x is basically the transformer, okay, or the function. Okay, and when you are actually getting the set of ordered pairs of x and fx, this fx basically denotes the y value in the Cartesian plane. Okay, when we actually graph some particular thing, so this independent variable marks your x values and the transformed output marks your y values. Clear? So this is your y-axis, this is your x-axis. So x fx basically gives you a point on the Cartesian plane. Clear? For example, you are given fx is equals to x cube. You take f of 2, which plots you to 8. So you can plot it like this. So this particular point, let's say you have 1, 2, and this is, let's say, 8. Okay. So this gives you the point 2, 8. Clear? Okay. And since fx equals to x cube, this function can have many inputs. Actually, all real numbers can be used as input here. So the domain will be real numbers, and every real number will have a real number output only. There is no restriction in the output. Every real number will give real cubes, so its range will also be a real number. And actually, you can plot, you can keep plotting each of these elements which from the domain, and will have its transformed element which belongs to the set of range, and you can keep plotting them to get the graph of this particular function, for example fx equals to x, this particular mapping can actually be considered as the equation y equals to x, because fx actually denotes your y value in the Cartesian plane, and you know already what is the curve of this particular thing. So this is arbitrarily this sort of a graph, and this is inclined at 45 degree. Okay, so every point will give you the input and output of this particular function. For example, if you have fx equals to x square, so you can get your graph like this. Okay, like this. It is more bulged. Okay, like this. Got it? For example, if you have fx equals to x cube, then the graph seems like this. The graph seems like this. You have numerous graphs. Fx equals to sin x will have a graph, sinusoidal graph, okay, which looks like this. Clear? Which looks like this. You can have fx is equals to cos x, where x is getting transferred to its cosine function. So it will have a curve of like this, graph of like this. Okay. So you can take an x from here, let's say. Suppose this is x equals to a. Okay. This is x equals to a. So its y value will be, so this will be a comma cos a. Clear? This point will be a comma cos a. I think this particular portion is clear. What is a function and what is its mapping? So when you will be asked the graph of a particular function, you can just arbitrarily graph the equation y equals to fx. Clear? And you will be done. Okay. So the basic elements of function is clear, I guess. That what is a function, what is its basic definition, what is its basic explanation, how can we plot and graph functions, what are some basic examples of arbitrary functions, and how it transforms inputs to outputs. Now a very important concept in function lies in finding the domain and range. Okay, finding the domain and range. Okay, so as you already know that domain is the set of all possible inputs of a function, and range is the set of all possible outputs of a function. Suppose you have this particular function fx equals to sin x. Now we know x belongs to any real number will satisfy this particular function. Okay, so the domain actually is the set of all real numbers. But what will be the range? Now we know that sin x can take values only between -1 to 1 including both of them, right? So its range will be -1 to 1 inclusive of -1 and 1. So we can actually show the structure of f as f transforms elements of R to the set of elements from -1 to 1. Clear? Got it? For example, you have, say, you have this function fx is equals to x plus 2 over x minus 2. Now the only element which cannot be actually used as an input is this function, in this function, is x equals to 2, because as you put x equals to 2, your denominator will become 0 and you cannot divide anything by 0. So the value of the function becomes undefined, or the ordinate for the abscissa x equals to 2 becomes undefined, right? So basically what will be your domain now? So you can use all real numbers except 2. All real numbers except 2 you can use this as your domain. And what will be actually its range? What will be its range actually? Okay, so what actually you can do is that, so if you define y is equals to x plus 2 over x minus 2, what you can do is that you can find the inverse image of this particular function. What is an inverse image? I'm telling you that it's very specific, nothing much. So if f is mapped from a to b, the inverse image maps b to a. Clear? The domain and the range gets interchanged. Clear? So what you can actually do is that if you want to try to find, or one thing you can easily do is that, if you can actually see here that putting any real number in this particular function, you will get a real number itself. There is a restriction. Okay, you just cannot put x equals to minus 2, that's it. Except that you can put any real number in it and you will have no restriction, but you will be able to get almost every real number. So its range basically lies in the set of all reals. So you can define this function as its domain in R minus 2 to R. Clear? Got it? Okay. Sometimes what happens is that, this thing I guess you people have understood. This thing you people I guess have understood. Okay. You might also be given some particular domain and range, and you are asked to find the mapping which actually helps you undergo the transformation. For example, if you are given, say, you are given a set A where you have the elements, let's say n square, such that n belongs to all real numbers. Okay, so you need to show a particular function, function which maps its element to the set A. So it is pretty much easy. As n belongs to real numbers, so you can set the domain as real numbers which maps to A, such that f of n, any input taken as n, gets transformed to its square value. Hence all the elements gets mapped to the set A. Clear? This is the basic structure of functions. Got it? Now, I guess you people are clear about this particular fact, what I'm talking about. What is a function and these things. Now there are some arbitrary functions which are kind of a bit exceptions type. For example, you have something called a signum function. You have something called a signum function. What is a signum function? So fx signum function is given like this: when x is not equals to 0, and 0 when x equals to 0. Clear? That is, x gets transformed to mod of x over x when x does not equal 0, and gets transformed to 0 when x equals 0. So how can you map this particular function, or how can you show the graph of this particular function? Okay, so this thing you can also write as minus x over x when x less than 0, 0 when x equals to 0, and x over x when x is greater than 0, which can be further written as minus 1 when x less than 0, 0 when x equals to 0, and plus 1 when x is greater than 0. And now you can map it like this. So when is x less than 0? When x is less than 0, it is minus 1. So it's this sort of a line where this actually is y equals to minus 1. Here x is 0 and here you have plus 1. Okay, this is y equals to plus 1. Clear? This can be the mapping of signum functions. Got it? I guess it's clear. Now what will be the domain of it? So you can find that it takes all real numbers as its domain. So because x in x equals to 0 also this is satisfying. So it will take all real number as its domain. So this has its domain in the reals. Clear? It has its domain in the reals. What is its range? So it takes only the values minus 1, 0 and 1, nothing else. So its range will be the set minus 1, 0 and 1. Clear? Got it? Okay. Then you have something called the greatest integer function. Greatest integer function. This is given as box of x. It's a very important thing, very interesting thing also. What it does is that if you give a, it actually works as the floor of x. That is, it gives you the greatest integer below x. For example, you have the box of 2. So this will give you 2 when 2 is an integer or a whole number actually. But suppose you are given box of 2.38. What will it do? What will it do? It will give you 2. It will give you 2. 2 as your answer. Got it? I guess this thing is being clear. Okay. For example, if you have the box of minus 2.38, what will it give you? It will give you minus 3, because minus 3 is the greatest integer which is less than minus 2 or minus 2.38. Clear? This is the greatest integer function. It gets plotted as, between 0 and 1. Between 0 and 1, let me change the color of the pen. Between 0 and 1, it is okay. So like this, between 0 and 1. Then it takes values from here. So this is 2. Then from here it moves to 3. You can see between 0 and 1, what does it do? Actually, it maps your function to 0, right? Between 1 and 2, this maps your function to 1. Between 2 and 3, it maps your function to 2. Similarly here, okay, so okay, wait a minute. So see here, this is x equals to minus 1, right? So between minus 1 and 0, it maps your function to minus 1. I think this particular thing is getting clear. What is how the mapping of the greatest integer function works. So in the similar way, you have something called the least integer function. You have something called the fractional part function. Fractional part function. Fractional part function is given as second bracket, curly brackets x, and any integer is basically the summation of the greatest integer function plus the fractional part function. The fractional part function of 2.38 will be nothing but 0.38. Clear? It will be nothing but 0.38. The decimal portion, nothing else. It gives you the decimal portion. So mapping of this thing is also basically same. So if you move from 0 to 1, if you move from 0 to 1, it actually gives you like this sort of a value, a triangular value. Okay, then 1 to 2 is like this, 2 to 3 is like this. Okay, this is 0, this is 1, this is 2. I think this portion is getting clear actually. And this is its range is basically y equals to 1. Range, not its boundary. The boundary of the graph is basically y equals to 1. Okay, so this is called the fractional part function. Similarly, you have something called the least integer function. Something called the least integer function. It works as the ceiling of x. What it does, it maps 2.38 to 3. It gives you the least value which is greater than the integer portion. Okay, least value greater than the given x. Okay, then if you are given minus 2.38, you will get it as minus 2. Clear? You will get it as minus 2. Got it? This is the particular thing. So these are some exceptional functions. Okay, so I guess you people have understood what is a mapping and what are these sorts of things, some exceptional functions. I will take another lecture where I will be completely going through each of these exceptional functions as well as their graphical representation. I guess you people have understood what is the domain and what is the range. Okay. Now, why I am telling these things about functions? Because functions are very much important in calculus, in abstract algebra. Okay, they are very much important. Got it? There are many more fields where they are very, very important. They are also important in physics, very much important in physics. Functions. Okay. So functions, I'm repeating it. Functions basically gives you a definition where one element gets transformed to other element. The elements which get transformed belong to the set of domains. The elements which, the transformed particular element is called the range. Okay. And the set in which the ranges fall are called the codomain. Clear? Now, the we will be studying about the definition of image and pre-image. Image and pre-image. Okay. What is the image and pre-image? Very much easy. Suppose you have a function which maps A to B. Suppose you have a function which maps A to B. So A is called the pre-image, pre-image of B, while B is called the image of A. A is called the image of B is called the image of A. Clear? So suppose you have two mappings like this. This is A, B, C. A gets mapped to, let's say, 1. B gets mapped to 2. C gets mapped to 3. So A, B, C are pre-images and 1, 2, 3 are the images. Clear? This is the definition of image and pre-image. Next most important thing which comes in the study of function is types of functions. Types, wait a minute. So types of functions. Achha. So basically there are three types of functions. One is called injective or also called one-one function. One is called surjective, also called onto functions. One is called bijective. Okay, bijective is both injective and surjective. Okay. Moreover, if there is a function which maps A to B and f is a bijective function, also called simply as an bijection, then the order of A will be equal to the order of B. Order of a set defines the number of elements in the set. Number of elements in A. Clear? This portion is clear, I guess. Okay. Okay. So how to check whether or what is the definition of one-one function? So one-one function actually means that suppose you have this function which maps A to B, and suppose you draw the sets A and here you have the set B. So let's say this is 1, this is 2, this is 3, this is 4. This is, let's say, A, B, C, D, E, F. So one-one function is that every element of A, so this is A, this is B, right? So every element of A gets mapped to distinct elements of B. That is, if 1 gets mapped to A, no element of A can get mapped to A. 2 gets mapped to B, 3 gets mapped to C, 4 gets mapped to F. This sort of a function is called a one-one function. This sort of a function is called the one-one function, where every element of A gets mapped to distinct elements in B. Clear? Now, how to check this particular thing, that whether a function is one-one or not? So, suppose you are told that prove that fx equals to x cube is a one-one function. Is a one-one function. Okay. Or so, how can you do this? So you need to go by the steps of contradiction. So let fx1 is equals to fx2, not contradiction actually. This is not contradiction. Exactly, this is not contradiction. We actually show that actually one-one in one-one function what happens is that fx1 equals to fx2 implies x1 equals to x2. Okay, that is there is only one particular x1 element which can have a distinct image. Clear? So you just need to show this. So we can, so showing this is pretty easy, right? So x1 cube equals to x2 cube, raising both to the power of 1 over 3, we get x1 equals to x2, right? So if x1 equals to fx2 implies x1 equals to x2. Therefore what we can say is that this actually gives you the one-one function mapping. Am I clear with this statement? In this way, you prove functions to be 1, 1. What is onto function? What is onto? Onto function is that suppose you have a function which maps elements of A to elements of B, and if this function can, and when this function is there, if this implies that there is also a function which maps elements of B to elements of A, that is the inverse function exists, the inverse function exists, then this sort of a function is called an onto function or a surjection or a surjection. Clear? That is, there exists an inverse element. For example, suppose you have the function which maps elements of real numbers to another set of elements of real numbers, such that fx is equals to x cube. Fx is equals to x cube. Clear? Now, if you consider now how to prove this statement, let's see. So first you need to assume that let y is equals to x cube. Then you can say x is equals to y to the power 1 over 3. So this thing actually means that f inverse of x is equals to x to the power 1 over 3. Now you can actually easily notice that this some sort of a function gx, let f inverse be equivalent to the function gx, which actually gives you the elements of the cube root of x. So this particular function will also have its domain in the set of real numbers and its range in the set of real numbers. So gx, so g will also have the domain in R and the range in R. Clear? Or you can say that f inverse will also have the domain in R and the range in R. So when this exists, this implies that this particular inverse image must also exist. So fx equals to x cube is a surjection where its domain and range are real numbers. Is it clear? Now if both appears, if a function is both 1 1 as well as onto, then why are the order of the sets same, or why are the elements in a set same? See, when we define the domain of a particular function, then actually it means that all elements of A gets mapped to elements of B, gets mapped to elements of B. Clear? So if the inverse function exists, then what we can actually say? If the inverse function exists, then we can say that all elements of B gets mapped to A, and also if A and B are 1 1, also if A and B are 1 1, okay, that is every element has a distinct image in B. So suppose this is the function f, okay, this is the function f. Suppose here ABC, it has DEF, let's say. So since this is 1 1 function, so A will be mapped to D, B will be mapped to E, and C will be mapped to F. Since F also has the inverse function, what that means? So that basically means that every element of D will also get mapped to A, right? Mapped to an element of B. And since f of A is equals to D, f inverse of D will get mapped to A, that is the pre-image. Image gets inverse mapped to its pre-image, right? So what happens is that D will get inverse map to A, E will get inverse map to B, and F will get inverse map to C. Now just see from here only that if the order where of the two sets were not same, clear, then they could have been 1 1, they could have been 1 1, but they could not have been onto, because then the inverse function would not have existed. Because if you have this set like this, suppose say ABC, here you have D E F G, and A belongs to D, B sorry, A gets mapped to D, B gets maps to E, and C gets maps to F, and G is the element in the set B which has no pre-image, then you cannot define the inverse function actually, because there is one element in B which is not getting mapped actually. Are you getting my point? Which has no pre-image. Then how can you form the inverse function? That's why the order of both the functions must be actually same when the function is a bijection. I guess this particular thing is clear. So this was all about today's lecture, guys. In the next lecture, we might be talking about more on functions, more on problems of functions, applications of functions, as well as proving some sorts of things using functions. So meet you guys in the next lecture.